Good evening. My name is Amy Lipset. I'm working in professional development at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. I'm going to review tonight's disclosure before we start our program. Thomas Jefferson University Hospital is an approved provider of nursing continuing professional development by the Pennsylvania State Nurses Association, an accredited approver by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. RN participants who successfully complete this activity will be awarded a maximum of 1.0 contact hours. Participants must attend the entire program and complete the online evaluation that you will receive in your email on Monday. We have no endorsements of products, no commercial support to report, or no conflicts of interest. And with this, I would like to turn tonight's program over to Dean Marino. Thank you.
Good evening, alumni, students, faculty, staff, and friends. I'm pleased to welcome you on behalf of the entire Jefferson College of Nursing team to a continuation of our 130th anniversary celebration and to celebrate Women's History Month with our visiting scholar presentation, Leading Through Engagement, A Journey Inside the Philadelphia School System. This month, Women's History Month, we honor women and girls who have sacrificed and contributed greatly to our nation. Trailblazers who, in the face of marginalization, discrimination, and disempowerment, decimated barriers that laid before them and broadened the potential for others. Today, in 2021, we are still seeing firsts and onlys. The first female president, vice president, the only woman ever confirmed as the director of national intelligence, and the first female head coach in NBA history. We know it's hard to be what you can't see, but the landscape is changing. And thanks to these trailblazers and all that came before them, we are moving the needle on creating a nation of endless possibilities for women and girls. This evening's visiting scholar, a trailblazer in her own right, Principal Linda Cliatt-Wayman, is a Philadelphian who has a track record of transformational leadership. Principal Weyman will share an insider's look at community engagement from the most important perspective, our Philadelphia community. She will illustrate the importance of establishing trust through leadership and in order to yield positive outcomes among many other leadership strategies. Community engagement is an important element of JCN's mission to improve lives. We are committed to supporting community partners through the invaluable work of our faculty, staff, students, and alumni who employ novel approaches to address community health issues and who have a solid history of strong community ties. I would just like to share some of the amazing examples of our most recent community work. JCN Fact 1 students volunteered at the Pennsylvania Convention Center for the first soft rollout of the community vaccine clinic, and this was guided by our very own Dr. Maureen Fitzgerald. Dr. Shawana Moore continues to build research with the community partner No More Secrets and shared opening remarks at their ribbon cutting ceremony for the first menstrual hub in the nation, called the Spot Period. Since 2015, JCN has been collaborating on pilot studies with community partners through the annual event, Community Driven Research Day. Some great work from this year's past projects include Breastfeeding Empowerment and Awareness Cafe with Dr. Aparna Kumar and Center in the Park with Dr. Sharon Rayner. And I would just like to take a few more moments to recognize some additional JCN valuable community partners. Best Foot Forward, Broad Street Ministry, Julia de Burgos Elementary School, Project Hope, Providing Underserved Resources and Safe Environments, also known as PURSE, Sisters Are Us Circle of Survivors, and Leashes of Valor, who brought us our first Chief Compassion Officer with 4 legs, Maggie. I hope that tonight's presentation will inspire us to further our community work in new and far-reaching ways by learning more about the people we serve and by promoting the empathy needed to lead and impact society. I am now pleased to continue tonight's program and introduce our Associate Dean of Research and Innovation, the JCN scholar that inspires nurse leaders to achieve positive outcomes through science, Dr. Joanne Robinson.
Thank you, Dean Marino, and thanks to all of you for joining us. We are really glad that you're here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this third in a series of remote visiting scholar presentations that we are offering in partnership with Jefferson's Alumni Office. Generous support from the Stratton Foundation and Jefferson College of Nursing allows us to make this series possible, and we thank them both. We also want to thank Dr. Lisa Whitfield Harris and the JCN Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for their inspired recommendation of this event to honor Women's History Month and for their help with recruitment of our fabulous speaker. Finally, a shout out goes to Gabrielle Santulli and Kim Choi from JCN's Office of Research and Innovation for their behind the scenes effort to get this program up and running. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Whitfield Harris, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I'd like to introduce Linda Cliatt-Wayman. She is a renowned education leader with an unwavering belief in the potential of all children. She has decades of experience to move educational leaders from knowledge to practice in ways that are transformative for children through her on-site leadership development programs. Principal Weyman grew up in North Philadelphia, where she experienced the injustice perpetuated against poor students in their education. She has dedicated her life to many children to escape poverty through education and her leadership style, as noted in the success of her students. Her fearless determination to lead and to love the students, no matter what, is a model for leaders in all fields. Principal Weyman's acclaimed 2015 TED Talk has been seen over by 2 million viewers. She was interviewed by Diane Sawyer on ABC World News Tonight and Nightline. Her book, Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard, is beloved by all educators, and she was named the top 50 finalists for the Global Teacher Prize out of over 8,000 nominees from around the world. In February 2021, she just received an honor as one of Philly's trailblazers, and you can see that at Smith Playground in North Philadelphia. Everyone, please welcome Principal Weyman as our visiting scholar for Women's History Month.
As around the sun the earth knows she's revolving, and the rosebuds know to bloom in early May. Just as hate no love's a cure, you can rest your mind assured that I'll be loving you always. The lyrics in that song, As by Stevie Wonder, instantly reminds me of my students. It just may remind you of a few of your patients as well. As an unknown author once said, every nurse has that one patient that they'll always remember. Reflecting on my time with my students before I give remarks reminds me of the love I have for them for this day, and it reminds me how our stories are intertwined. And just seeing their faces puts me at ease to tell you our story. Good evening, Jefferson College of Nursing faculty, staff, advisory board, and friends. Thank you for the invitation to be here tonight to speak to you during your visiting scholar and alumni event in celebration of Women's History Month. The theme of my talk this evening will be Leading Through Engagement, a journey inside the school district of Philadelphia. It is my goal by the end of this evening to simply leave you thinking about leading through engagement, community engagement that is, and how that powerful act can change lives. Community engagement begins my journey through the School District of Philadelphia. And because of community engagement, I was fully able to prepare the next generation of thinking women, the young women you just saw in my opening slide, against some impossible odds for life after high school. Here is a fraction of our story in hopes that it will impact your story in some profound way in the future. I was preparing to enter third grade. One day, there was a knock at the front door. There stood a gentleman, a white gentleman, holding a clipboard in hand. In those days, when a white gentleman came to your door, fear immediately took over. It was the 60s, the height of the civil rights movement. My mother cracked the door open just wide enough to conversate with the man on the other side of the door. My mother asked, "May I help you?" He said, "I am from the School District of Philadelphia, and I have been assigned to engage with the Black community to locate children that would voluntarily take part in the district's new desegregation program." Desegregation. That term had to be explained to my mother. The gentleman explained that this is a busing program and that they wanted to bus her two daughters out of this neighborhood, which was North Philadelphia, to attend a school in another. Northeast Philadelphia would be their destination. My mom had heard of Northeast Philadelphia, but had never been to that part of the city. He went on to explain that my sister and I would ride the bus for over an hour each day. My mom had so many questions. She was so nervous. She wanted to know firsthand and foremost, would we be safe? Because the word on the street was that the residents of the Northeast did not want busing. My mom then asked, "Did you go door to door to ask other families to volunteer as well?" He said, "Yes, I did." "How many parents agreed to send their children?" my mother asked. He said, "None. Many of your neighbors never answered the door, and the others are simply too afraid to send their children outside of this neighborhood." My mom found the man to be kind and sincere as she spoke to him through the slightly open door. He took his time and explained that he just wanted to help. As they stood there, engaged in conversation through the crack in the door, she began to relax, and he eased my mother's fears with his smile and his knowledge. He could answer every question without searching for an answer and never said, "I don't know," as a response. He spoke with a very empathetic tone and asked, "Do you want your children to have a good education?" "Of course I do," my mother said, "but I am afraid for them." She finally was comfortable enough to open the door a little wider. And after a lot of questions and answers back and forth, seeing that the gentleman was determined to sell her on this opportunity for my sister and I, she asked abruptly, how would they get home for lunch? "I have to work." In those days, all of the students were sent home for lunch. He said, "Oh, they would not come home for lunch. They would not arrive home until 4 o'clock each day." My mom was astonished. She began to look at this opportunity as a double blessing. She was on the verge of losing her job because she would take the subway from work on her lunch hour, feed us lunch, and then try to get back to work on the subway before her hour lunch was over. It was exhausting for her, and she was afraid every day that she would lose her job. Due to the stranger's knowledge, patience, and insight, my mom decided to trust the gentleman holding the clipboard. And by doing so, she would provide her children with a good education, as the man described it, and save her job. Risk-taking, caring, listening, questioning, compassion, suggesting, empathy, knowledge, and trust is what it took to change the trajectory of my life. Community engagement saved lives. It was now time for me to enter high school. I no longer wanted to ride the bus for hours. The racial tension never ceased. And I wanted to walk to schools with my friends in the neighborhood. After a lot of persuading and begging, my mother allowed me to attend the neighborhood high school in my North Philadelphia community with my friends. Here is when I first realized that there were two educational systems in Philadelphia. Here is where I truly understood what the gentleman that knocked on my door was referring to when he said, "Do you want your children to get a good education?" Like he knew something that we did not know. I will never forget my first day in high school. I remember walking in and I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Students were everywhere. No organization, no systems, no adult supervision, just chaos. It was shocking to me. It all seemed so normal to everyone else, even all my friends. It was time for English class. The teacher introduced himself as a new teacher to the school. He said it was his first day. He handed out scripts to the play Macbeth. He asked for volunteers to take each role. There were no volunteers, so he assigned every student a role to not to single out a few students. He said it was out. He said, when it's your turn to read your lines, please read them. Much to my surprise and to the surprise of the new teacher, only two students could read the words to the play fluently. A young man who said he was just asked to leave the Catholic school system for some reason, and myself. The teacher quickly collected the strips and stood there looking out among the class, stunned. Ninth graders, and most of them could not read the words to the play. I ran all the way home in tears, telling my mom that something was terribly wrong because the students in our ninth grade class could not read. My mother was so upset. "Cannot read," she said. She came to the school the next day to transfer me back to school in the Northeast. But she was told that when you make the decision to leave the desegregation program, there would be no returning. I was stuck there for 4 years and went to college with what I learned primarily in the 8th grades prior. For some of you, this story may be shocking, but imagine this was 1976. And when I took over my first classroom as a teacher in 1983 and my first principalship in 2003 in the same neighborhood where I went to high school, the students still could not read on grade level. And today, the problem remains. When I was accepted into college, unprepared and struggling to stay, and watching so many of my friends I met from Philadelphia leave college early because they just could not do the coursework, I would often ask myself, where would I be in life if that kind gentleman would have never taken his job so seriously, been brave enough to walk the streets in a neighborhood for which he was not familiar, take time to listen, answer my mother's questions, give her vital information she did not know, suggest what he thought was best for her children, even though he was a stranger, and then demonstrated plenty of empathy for our situation. Where would I be? He took the time to be accommodating to my mother and gave her the facts about what education could be like for her children if she just trusted him. His community engagement, even though it was job related, came with the three qualities that I heard that make Jefferson College of Nursing so special. He came to serve, help others, and he cared. And his caring changed the trajectory of my entire life. Something nurses do every day, change the trajectory of someone's life. How special is that? These two experiences with the School District of Philadelphia shaped my reason for becoming an educator. I too wanted to serve, help others, and care for children who had been neglected and forgotten. I wanted to offer to the next generation of students in the community where I grew up and prove to everyone that children did not have to leave their neighborhood if they did not choose to, to learn to read and write. The day came, excuse me, for me to lead as principal. I was assigned to open the Young Women's Leadership School at Rhodes, excuse me, the first public high school for girls in Philadelphia with no entry requirements. This school was in the same neighborhood where I grew up and attended school. Upon entry, excuse me, I was given the data. Only 9% of the girls were proficient in literacy, and only 3% were proficient in math, according to the state assessment when the doors opened in 2003. It was imperative that the young women improve their literacy and math skills if their career goals were ever going to be met. So many of my girls needed extra support to move their proficiency levels along. My staff and I decided that we needed support to help the girls reach their goals. I began to stretch my leadership through engaging with the community. I was asked by my colleagues, "Are you sure you want to bring some outsiders into the building? You know they will talk about what they see. If a bad incident happens while they are there, they may tell someone you cannot run your school and you will get fired." I heard these stories time and time again. I later found out that was the major reason a lot of principals were not engaged with the community. Fear should never stop community engagement. Yes, I was a new principal, but I could not let fear stop me from getting the girls the help they so desperately needed. I searched and searched to find the right partnership to support my staff. Finally, I was given the name of a service learning coordinator at Villanova University. She was looking for sites for her students to serve in communities that were unfamiliar to them and to give them a different perspective on life. And I was looking for tutors to help change my students' life. It was an opportunity to offer a life-changing experience to both parties. Busloads of Villanova students tutored our girls in reading, math, and writing throughout my 10-year tenure. When I departed from the school, over 50% of the girls were proficient or advanced in math and literacy. My partnership with Villanova University remains to this day. providing programming for children and for the nonprofit I founded 4 years ago. It has always been my goal, as it is yours, to care, to serve, and to help others live their best life. Today, Jefferson College of Nursing is celebrating 130 years of excellence in nursing, applying their vision of reimagining, transforming, and disrupting the way nurses lead and impact society. JCNs intends to reach the vision through intense focus on their mission to improve lives through academic programs of excellence, exceptional clinical practice, community engagement, transformative research and inquiry, and far-reaching philanthropy. Every aspect of Jefferson College of Nursing's mission is extremely important. My focus tonight, as you can tell, is the importance of community engagement. During this difficult time in our nation's history, community engagement is needed more than ever. Nurses have always been leaders in keeping America healthy and safe. And boy, do we thank you for your dedication and service. Without you, where would we have turned to see us through a global pandemic? If all Americans are going to return to pre-COVID practices and continue to have effective healthcare workforces, excuse me, with nurses leading the way, community engagement is mandatory. If I was asked to suggest areas for JCN's community engagement, it would be in 2 areas: to provide access to quality healthcare for all and to provide access to the nursing profession from a variety of communities. The COVID-19 pandemic has uncovered the disparities in healthcare among the poor and communities of colors. Knowledge of these disparities have left residents from these communities to lack trust in the healthcare system, putting their overall health at risk. The only way to change perception and save lives is through community engagement. Many residents will not come to you, so you must go to them. Provide them with compassion, the facts, examples, provide time to answer their questions, to break down the walls so that they can trust that you really care and you really want them to have a long, healthy life. Trust. Trust is the foundation of all successful community engagement. Trust leads to action. That is when you will know that your engagement with the community was successful. How do you gain trust? By telling the truth in a language we all can understand. COVID-19 has magnified the need to increase the nursing pool. Locating potential nursing candidates is urgent. Having retired nurses serve as needed, and it is necessary, but it is not a sustainable solution to the nursing shortage. Recruitment must be the goal of community engagement. Nurses are needed from every community, especially our most vulnerable communities where trust has been eroded over the years. Diversity is a requisite for an effective, highly effective healthcare workforce in the future. Potential nurses from our most vulnerable communities need support finding accurate information about the nursing profession. They may need a nudge or your belief in them that they can actually become a nurse. They need access to knowledge. JCN cannot wait until they find you. You must find and recruit them. So, where should you begin? In the neighborhood middle or high schools? Jefferson College of Nursing has a partnership with the Burgos Middle School. That is a great place to start. Expand your relationship from providing much needed physicals to being physically on site to demonstrate all the qualities of a nurse, or some qualities of a nurse: integrity, dedication to excellence, respect, strong communication skills, just to name a few. This will ease their fears and spark their curiosity. Start a nurses club to teach them while they are young Jefferson College of Nurses values: to put people first, be bold and think differently, and to always do the right thing. Learning these valuable lessons could be a matter of life or death in the community where they live, and inspire them to become a nurse. Create a system to follow the JNC's nursing club members from debugers through high school. It could be a great way for you to learn and witness the disparities in science course offering in Philadelphia public schools. It just may flicker your advocacy. After the Philadelphia School Board members released their 2021-22 goals and guardrails for the Philadelphia's children, it is still focusing on trying to get the majority of the students in our underserved communities to learn to read and write and compute on grade level. Science education or advancement in technology are not listed as priorities for the children in the school district of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, like in the 60s and the 70s, the educational quality is still not equal in all communities in Philadelphia. While principal, I was only able to recruit one certified physics teacher in 10 years. So many of my girls never thought about careers in science because of lack of access to science courses. Of course, they should have had access to the same courses like every other high school student in Philadelphia public schools. That has to change. Here is where JCN's mission can also apply. Form a partnership with a high school to supplement English science education to spark the interest and help prepare the students to be successful when they attend Jefferson College of Nursing program, and mentor them and be there to celebrate with them and also celebrate your contribution to the nursing profession when they graduate. There are many reasons for community engagement, but I believe to save the lives of people that have been long forgotten and to locate, teach, prepare the next generation of nurses are among the most pressing. This is Women's History Month. And as I reflect on that graduating class of women I showed you at the beginning of my talk, I can only pray that they know I gave them all that I could to make sure that they were successful in life. I pray that my risk-taking, my caring, my listening, my questioning, my suggestion, my empathy, my knowledge, their trust in me, my leadership, and my willingness to engage in the community change the trajectory of their lives the same way that person that knocked on my door so many years ago did for me. Nurses, it may take knocking on doors, starting nursing clubs in schools, supplementing the science curriculum in high schools, advocating to prioritize science education in Philadelphia public schools, or even enhancing your own higher education to build trust and to make sure that nurses will always remain in the forefront of healthcare of excellence. You may be saying you have a lot on your plate already, and God knows that's the truth. But community engagement outside the walls of a hospital will make sure your hard work will never be in vain. You will save more lives, see more informed patients, and assure that this nation will be prepared, God forbid, for its next pandemic by making sure that there are an excess of nurses to serve as brilliantly as you long after you retire. Leading through engagement will solidify your legacy for years to come. And always remember, community engagement enriches the lives of the giver and the recipient. And now, as I bring my talk to a close, I am reminded of President John F. Kennedy Moon's speech at Rice University on September the 12th of 1962. During that speech, while JFK was trying to convince the nation to support the billion-dollar space program, he said these words: "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things too, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will organize to measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one in which we intend to win, and the others too. Today, let's alter his goal and make this your goal. We choose to lead through engagement. We choose to lead through engagement in this decade and do other things too, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and others too. Because when we win that challenge, America will be prepared to lead and succeed at every healthcare crisis presented to them, because we will have an excessive healthcare workforce ready and able to take care of all of its citizens simultaneously with love. And one day, a patient, a friend, a co-worker, or a perfect stranger will say to you what I would say to my students each and every day: if nobody told you they loved you today, you remember I do, and I always will. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Cliatt-Wayman, for a great and important call to action and wonderful message. We'll now open up to our attendees to share any questions that they have with you, and you can do that using the Q&A button, which is located on your screen. And if you don't see it, just try moving your mouse and it should appear. We have our first question, and it's probably a two-parter.
Okay.
The question is, what keeps you up at night related to the Philadelphia community? And then in the second part, what might we be able to do to contribute to fixing the issue?
Well, a lot keeps me up at night. The violence, for one. The thought that so many children are still not in school and need to be in school. And I believe that that contributes to the violence in our community. A way that I believe that everyone can help is through community engagement, to reach out, to touch someone, tell someone how important school really is, because there are a lot of Philadelphia residents and teenagers that who I work with, do not believe in the educational system and do not believe that education is even important to transform their life. So I spend most of my time trying to convince young people that education really can transform their lives. And I believe that it will take partnerships from everyone in Philadelphia to partner with the Philadelphia School District in order to supplement the things the school district cannot give our students.
Yes, thank you for that. Our next question relates to mentorship. Do you believe that a one-on-one mentorship program could work well for students who are interested in nursing, or one program that maybe would be more general for girls to girls?
Well, that's a very good question because the organization that I run currently trending is we call them coaches, but they're predominantly mentors. And what we have found is that the one-on-one mentorship at the beginning was struggling. So we changed the way we did mentorship and coaching, and we placed all of our girls and the participants in our program in cohorts with one coach to 10 students actually. And that seemed to be best for everyone because they all could support one another and they knew what each other were facing in school. And then the one coach could act as a facilitator among all of the students. Also, I was always leery about my coaches being one-on-one with a student and so that took that fear from me away. And so I believe that the team approach to mentorship and coaching works better with today's youth.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
And our next question relates to your experience. I'm wondering, did you get any support from the teachers union? And then also asking your work with parents. Did you have an open door policy, or how did you find success working with parents?
Okay, let's start with the teachers union. Now, I did find success with the teachers union only because I was very well versed in the teacher's contract. I made it my business to understand that contract backwards and forwards. I could all the important things to memory. So I could actually recite part of a contract when my teachers would come up with things or reasons why they couldn't do some things. I would actually tell them the page number where they could find it, underline it, and so on and so forth. Because I believe that I would never, ever ask teachers to do something that was against their contract. But I also wanted to make sure the teachers understood the maximum of what they could do, even though they were in a union. So that was important to me. As far as parents are concerned, I had an open door policy with parents. It was always a struggle to often engage with parents because they are involved in so many other things. But I would always tell the parents when they would come to the school and when I would try to get them to come to the school, I understand that you have a lot to do, but your child is number one. And once I would tell the parent that over and over again, and what could I do to make it a little easier for you? They were always willing to engage with the school. But you have to remember, a lot of parents from our vulnerable communities had bad relationships with schools. And so they never ever wanted to come back to a school again. So we had to make sure that they understood that the schools were changing and it was a welcoming place for parents.
Thank you. Our next question is about elementary education. And do you think that there is a need and an important focus on the 3 Rs and STEM programs to really prepare students for the future?
Oh, goodness, yes. And again, most of my experience actually is in challenging environments, in challenging schools, in urban schools, working mainly with children of color. But I do know that in order for all children to be well, ready for the next generation, we have to make sure they can read, write, and communicate effectively. But we also must prioritize science education. We must prioritize technology because if we don't, it is always going to be this huge divide. I understand. I used to always tell my teachers, learning to read, learning to write, and learning to compute was the basics of what we were supposed to do in school. That was a given. That wasn't even up for debate. We wanted to make sure the children were critical thinkers, make sure they were lifelong learners, make sure they wanted to learn and understand how important education would change their lives and get them out of poverty. So of course, yes, It is so vitally important, the 3 R's, but we must make sure that everyone understands that is a given. That's the bar. We have to rise higher than that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And our next question is really related to you. And what do you attribute your motivation, your drive, your success, in addition to the education and mentorship that you've had, and what keeps you motivated to work hard for your students? Do you have a support system? How are you getting through?
Well, what keeps me motivated? The news, the children that I see that walk the streets of Philadelphia, my belief that everybody was put on this earth to serve and help someone else, my hope and belief that life could change for everybody if everybody is lend a helping hand. My family, the majority of my immediate family, still resides in North Philadelphia. They did not take the opportunities that was offered to my mother. A lot of my family members declined that opportunity. And it did not fare well for many of them in the educational system. So when I visit my family, when I work with my next generation of family members, I want them to understand and to see me as a light and to understand that through hard work and persistence and dedication, they too can live their dreams. So I pray a lot. I pray often. God gives me the direction to keep going. I am always very, very nervous to speak in public. People always tell me, well, I can't really believe that, but it's true. But I believe it's part of what I have to do. So I do it even though I'm fearful. So I think it's just my belief in God that does that. It keeps me moving along.
Thank you. Going off of that experience, we have a question that there's a real need for diversity in nursing and the healthcare workforce, so it better reflects the communities that our nurses serve. Jefferson is committed to doing this, and our question is, how can we best reach young Philadelphia students to help spark their interest in nursing and health sciences?
Again, I do believe, and again, I was once the assistant superintendent for high schools. So I was the leader of all 52 high schools in Philadelphia. So I know the answer to this question well. We always had a very difficult time actually retaining science teachers in all of our diverse communities. And so we were always in need of partnerships with hospitals and the science profession to come in to supplement what the students were not getting. And that's why in my talk tonight, I really, truly believe if Jefferson forms partnerships with some of our most vulnerable communities and let the students understand that nursing is a real viable opportunity for them, that they will seek nursing as a profession. But because their science background is not strong, they usually believe that science is out of their reach. They believe nurses, the profession, is out of their reach. Some of them believe doctors is out of their reach because they're just not well versed in, well versed in I don't know what my phone's, they're just not well versed in, I'm so sorry, not well versed in the science profession. I cannot believe my phone is on. Thank you.
It's okay.
I was waiting for your call.
Related to the sciences, and one of our attendees has asked, do you think that introducing experimentation in science experiments, really helps to tap into natural curiosity for learning, regardless of reading and writing skill?
Oh, God, yes. And you got to remember, most of the students in Philadelphia are hands-on learners. They're visual learners. They love to do anything with their hands. And a lot of them, even the students that may have struggled in reading and math, if they were amazed when some of these when the nursing professionals would come to the school and actually do hands-on experiments with them, they would be amazed of what they could learn. And it always did spark the curiosity in the nursing profession or in the medical profession.
Mm.
Always.
Wonderful. Well, I think we may have time for one more question, and we'll just put a last call out there for anyone who wants to share questions in the Q&A box. And while we wait to see if some more come in, I will say that you are getting rave reviews in our comments. I know you can't see them, but our attendees are really grateful for your time this evening.
I'm so grateful to be here, and I really do believe again how community engagement can change your life. I think about my own life, and so it was an honor to actually speak to you all tonight about the importance of community engagement. And because right now I see in my own community the actual fear of taking a vaccine. And just by having a conversation with them and talking to them and being there to hold their hand and tell them if it may be necessary for them to do and to give and to get the vaccine is so important. And so I'm honored to be here tonight.
And we're honored to have you. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing and you're sharing your expertise with all of us. We would like to also thank everyone who has joined us this evening and participated in the program. We invite you to contribute to our own Jefferson community and get connected in our brand new Jefferson Alumni Network. And you can do that at alumninetwork.jefferson.edu. If you sign up and update your profile, you'll be able to search for fellow alumni and classmates based off of their name, region, major, and specialties. So check that out. You can also learn more about the College of Nursing's postgraduate certificate program in advanced headache diagnosis and management at jefferson.edu/JCN headache. We also hope that you'll join us at more alumni events and virtual programs in the coming weeks and months. We have a number of exciting programs coming up, and you can find a full list and register at jefferson.edu/alumni events. And before we wrap up, I think we may have just received one more question for you, Principal, and it's do you have any suggestions on engaging young men in nursing and in health professions and exposing them to those fields?
Again, men is the hardest, especially men of color, but you can do it the same way that you have just identified a moment ago by coming in and showing them the experiments, the hands-on activities, and the way they actually could help their own community. If you can do that and can tap in to why it is important that men, and especially men of color, become nurses, I'm sure that they will actually take you up on it. But right now, not too many men of color thinks it's a viable option.
Well, thank you once again for your advice, and we hope to continue to partner with you and the work you're doing.
And thank you so much.
Thanks again for joining us. Be safe and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.